Yes.
Okay, good evening. On the behalf of the Grand Chair for Intercultural Studies, welcome to our third lecture series, Current Issues in Islam. I warmly welcome today unique guest lecturer Jonathan Benthall from University College London. He will talk about the social work, poverty, inequality, and social safety nets, voluntary welfare organization, specifically addressed to the Islamic Charities. Jonathan Benthall is the former director of the Royal Anthropological Institute, editor of Anthropology Today, and author of Disasters, Relief and the Media. He is currently a fellow research in the Department of Anthropology at the University College of London and former chair of the International NGO Training and Research Center at Oxford. He has studied the relationship between contemporary Islam and humanitarian aid since 1993 and has published widely on this topic. Some of his selected publications about this issue at 1993 Disasters, Relief and Media, at 2003 The Charitable Crescent, Politics of Aid in the Muslim World, and his latest book about returning to religion, Why a Secular Aid is Haunted by Faith. More broadly, his interests extend on the one hand to the international aid systems, and on the other hand, he focalized to the Islamic charities and Islamic aid and helping of new quasi-religious movements and their interactions with traditional religions. He is continuing his studies of faith-based organizations with special reference to Islamic charities. And today he will present us to the many ways of the Islamic charities with describing some fundamental notions in Islam, such as zakat or sadaqah. I'd like to thanks again, and I welcome to Professor Jonathan Benthall. Please.
Good evening. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. Please say if the microphone isn't working or if I'm not speaking loud enough. Voluntary welfare provision by Muslims has much in common with other charitable traditions, though with some differences relating especially to Quranic doctrine. All Islamic authorities agree on the vital importance of charity. Zakat, the Islamic tithe, is a major support in the standard Islamic case against the evils of both capitalism and communism. It draws the sting of Marxism, depriving it of a legitimate argument against private property, and property of any scandalous features. It turns the main contradiction in capitalism into a happy spiral of redistribution, and it answers with clarity the communist denial of the right to possess. It solves the problem of poverty by leave of the rich, and punishes those who hoard and monopolize and try to corner markets. Under the ideal scheme that wide observance of zakat would make possible, the rich do not become poor, but the poor cease to be poor. Zakat is a reminder that all wealth belongs to God, as equally in Judaism and Christianity. But there are several verses in the Quran that tolerate economic inequalities, even though the dignity and fundamental equality of all human beings as children of Adam are also recognized. Islam accepts, so the argument runs, that there are inevitably differences among human beings that will in nearly every society result in economic inequalities. Wealth is to be cherished in moderation, but not to be, as we might say nowadays, fetishized. The Quran condemns the competitive multiplication of wealth and deprecates ostentation. Provided that believers obey the rules enjoined, there's no need for them to feel guilty about their inability to measure up to an ideal morality. there's no need for the well-to-do either to give away all their wealth or to feel guilty about not being poor. Nor would Islamic teaching commend, as does the Christian gospel, the widow who gives away her last farthings to the poor. It would be pedantic to exaggerate the differences, but the Christian concept of charitable action bears connotations of spiritual love that are absent in the Quranic terms zakat and sadaqah. Zakat bears lexical connotations of both purity and growth. The meaning is taken to be that by giving up part of one's wealth, one purifies that which remains, and also oneself, through a restraint on one's selfishness and one's indifference to others' privations. The recipient, too, is purified from being jealous of those who are well off. Sadaqah, optional almsgiving over and above what is required, has connotations of justice, but is so closely associated with zakat that the key verse in the Quran that defines the purpose of sadaqah, that is Surah 960, is treated as referring also to zakat. Zakat is closely linked in Islamic teaching with prayer. Prayer is held to be ineffective if the zakat obligation is not met, and it's also associated with sacrificial offerings. Zakat is one of the third pillars of Islam, as I'm sure you all know. Sadaqah is also an important principle today, especially because in practice it's less rule-bound. But according to Zakat, Muslims are enjoined to donate about 1/40 of their assets after deducting the value of their home and working necessities to a list of 8 categories of people. These are, to borrow the most usual descriptions, the poor, the destitute, those employed to administer the zakat, those who might be converted to Islam or assist in the cause, slaves, debtors, those committed to the way of God, and travelers in need. Theologians have debated the interpretation of this list. For instance, slaves may include prisoners of war or the subjects of oppressive regimes. The way of God is taken to mean the same as jihad. Now, jihad is an elusive concept whose nearest equivalent for Christians is the idea of the church militant warring against the powers of evil. Jihad can have military connotations in some contexts, but it can also mean a spiritual commitment to master one's weaknesses and lead a better life. Effective compassion for the disadvantaged is one possible expression of this commitment. The Quranic injunctions on zakat have much in common with Hebraic teaching, the obligation to give 1/10 of annual agricultural produce, which, though it was replaced in early Christianity by the idea of free will offerings, was later revived in various forms by some Christian churches. Some denominations, such as the Mormons, still practice strict tithing in the same way as devout Muslims. The Quran not only urges generosity, but also tells Muslims that they should encourage others to be generous. It's the only holy book that actually tells people to encourage others to be generous, as far as I know. Zakat purifies both wealth itself and the individual. It is specially enjoined and bestows special merit during the holy month of Ramadan, which has become a major fundraising season, similar to Christmas. Alms given discreetly, that is alms, A-L-M-S, not the other kind with an R, alms given discreetly rather than publicly are best. Those whose personal wealth is below a fixed threshold are exempt from almsgiving. At various points in Islamic history, zakat became a mere vehicle for extracting taxes. In no present-day state is zakat organized exactly as Islamic teaching prescribes. In some countries, such as Pakistan, it's become incorporated in the tax system. In others, it's left to the discretion of individuals entirely. And during the period of the Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman state did not, as far as I can see, make any use of zakat for its fundraising purposes. It was left to individuals. Great efforts have been made to explain how the original injunction should be interpreted in response to modern economic realities. It's used as a fundraising device by charities both in Muslim countries and among Muslims resident in Western countries. some charities often supply their supporters with tables to enable them